Good space time, y'all, and welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast, a source for educational insights into the world of Web3. Today, we are joined by Jose Macedo from Delphi Labs. We talk about mass adoption, grannies, and values in Web3. We also mention poker as gateway to crypto and even martial arts. We dive into the importance of bug bounty programs and Web3 security, project funding structures and open source exploit system testing. And finally, we discuss product market fit, monetary policy, and the future NFTs.
PayPal almost killed our business like 3 or 4 times, in various situations of freezing our accounts and stuff. And this is like the cold hard reality is for any ambitious, smart, young, technical person, they're going to heavily consider doing something where they can launch a token or attaching a token to something they're doing. Crypto is going to bring you to your knees a few times. An exploit normally, like even the word means to make full use of and derive benefit from a resource, right? Or like it's a software tool that takes advantage of a flaw in a system. The states and companies have more power than ever. And I think with this technology, you can kind of really upend that. We decided to build stuff and rather than just consult.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast. Today we have Jose Macedo with me, one of the co-founders, or shall I say founder? I don't know the correct way. It's always confusing with that addition of Delphi Labs. Jose, hi, man. How are you?
How you doing, man? Thanks for the invite. Yeah, co-founder, because there was a few others involved too.
It's hard these days. You get confused. I also call myself a co-founder because there was another person involved. But then sometimes you call a person co-founder and they get upset, man. So you never
Really?
know these days.
Damn, fair enough.
Man, first thing is first. You said just before we started the recording that you were just in Paris. I'm assuming the whole conference scene. How was it, man?
Yeah, it was really good, really energizing. It was very draining, but also very energizing. Yeah, there's
What impressed you?
yeah, I'd say that in general, it seems like we have line of sight on crypto infrastructure getting to the point where you can have really fast and cheap block space, like in the next few years. Whether it's like modular with Celestia and the kind of sovereign rollup thesis, or like Ethereum L2s themselves. Um, I think we're getting to that point where there's line of sight on scalable cheap block space, and so I'm excited to see what applications people choose to build on that. And that's probably the area that I think was lacking in Paris and in crypto generally right now is like some real applications. It seems like almost everything people build is like an optimization or a slight improvement. It's either infrastructure, which is like badly needed, and we're arguably still in that phase where that's the main thing that's needed, or it's like small optimizations on existing applications that themselves have like questionable product market fit. So I think that's kind of like yeah, exciting to see all the infrastructure and a bit, I wouldn't say disappointed, but like kind of curious to see what people end up choosing to build on that, what applications people choose to build on that.
I'm gonna ask you more questions with it, but before I go into that, just because I skipped kind of like the usual start,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna go back to that. Sorry, I know it was me, but I want to go back to this thing, so don't lose that thought if it's okay. But I'm still gonna ask you first of all to introduce yourself.
Yep.
Of course, I mean I can do you an intro, but I would like you in your intro not to just talk about, um, what you do for work, but mainly, not mainly. Sorry, you choose anything you want to say, of course, and anything you talk about, but what specifically you're working on right now, maybe as well as part of your work,
Yeah.
and what excites you currently in your work,
Yeah.
maybe as well.
So I'm Jose, one of the co-founders of Delphi Labs and Delphi Ventures. So I joined crypto in 2017. Before that, I was in my teens. I played like professional poker, played some of the highest stakes online. That was decently fun. Then I kind of stopped doing that and went to university, studied politics, philosophy, and economics, started a bunch of different businesses. Most of them failed. Some were decently successful. One was like an e-commerce business that I exited and that ended up paying for my university life. And then another one was a martial arts academy. I got very into martial arts. I was always into like games in general, right? Like whether it was poker or martial arts or like football and stuff before. Um, and kind of when I came across crypto in 2017, it was really like at the intersect of all my interests. Like it was game theory and economics. It was like entrepreneurship and seeing the kind of businesses you could start on these rails. And it was also like I had an understanding of the payment rails just from building an e-commerce business and like PayPal almost killed our business like 3 or 4 times, in various situations of freezing our accounts and stuff. So kind of fell down the rabbit hole. And then, yeah, at some point, like started Delphi Ventures, and Delphi is a research company. So was writing research on a lot of different areas of the space, and then did a fund where we tried to raise a fund in 2019 and no one would give us money. So us 7 co-founders kind of put in $1 million of our own money all together. And yeah, we're now managing around 250 million across 2 funds, which is pretty exciting. Obviously we got lucky and kind of rode the wave, right? And yeah, like in our second fund, it's us 7 plus a bunch of employees and stuff that work at Delphi. And then there's Delphi Labs, which is the bit I'm mostly focused on, where it started off as Delphi's consulting arm. So we would work with protocols and projects in the space to help them solve problems, basically. For Aave, we helped with their safety module design. For Synthetics, we helped with their risk asset framework. For Thorchain, we helped build their Midgard API. So ended up working with a lot of the top founders in the space. And from doing that, gained a lot of kind of IP and built a really good team. And at some point, we decided to build stuff and rather than just consult. So we incubated Mars and Astroport, which were both based on Terra. Some people might know those. And obviously that initially went very well and then went not so well. As Gattuso says, sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. And that's really what it was. And so now they're both relaunched. Astroport's live on 3 chains. Mars is live on Osmosis and going live on Neutron very soon. So they both found their homes. And with labs, our focus is really on figuring out what the most interesting, like cutting edge of crypto applications is, and very much focused on applications rather than like infrastructure, and like trying to incubate teams that are looking to build there, basically. So find the best entrepreneurs to tackle like the hardest problems in crypto, the hardest like application level problems in crypto.
That's a lot of things that definitely connect with me for sure. Like starting from what you started to. I'm curious about martial arts, by the way. What martial arts do you do? What do you practice? I also do something.
Oh, I used to do MMA back in the day, but now I do just Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Nice, 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 nice. I do capoeira and Krav Maga, so
Oh, nice.
we should meet one day for. No, I'm
Let's do
kidding.
it.
Let's
I've
do
done a
it.
bit of capoeira.
Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah,
You good?
the capoeira,
Yeah.
not too good. I can do some of the Jenga and cartwheel around, and I remember
Nice.
some of the stuff, but yeah, I'm not a great dancer, I think, so kind of struggle with the rhythm of it.
But this is actually a question I have, which is kind of maybe not that complicated, a simple question, really. But what do you think? I mean, as somebody who you mentioned gaming and martial arts, and you mentioned poker, of course. And I mean, it's kind of a known fact about poker players, going into crypto as being good at mathematics and everything. I have a slightly different question on that, the same topic. Do you think that the whole thing of fair gaming and honor from martial arts, is that some of the values that you think we see enough in Web3, or is it something we should see more in Web3 space?
Good question. I think amongst the people that we generally back and work with, we see a lot of it, I would say. A lot of like deals that are done on trust, a lot of teams that are really trying to build stuff the right way. Um, yeah, I think we actually see like a good bit of it. There is also like this is like kind of pioneer frontier tech, so it attracts the worst, and that's a lot of what makes the news, right? Whether it's FTX, SBF, like and all the madness of last year. But I do think there's and just generally like other stuff like people faking traction and doing all of this. I think in general we do see some of we do see a bit of that. We like the fair game approach, and also to some extent, crypto is about like designing games that don't require people to be fair in order for them to work, right? Where everyone can act in their own self-interest, and that actually creates like a good result for everyone. And I think like some level of exploits and stuff is like a natural consequence of like these games trying to find product market fit, right? And in a sense, if your game gets exploited, you designed a bad game. And I think these systems are it's crazy, right? You have systems with billions of dollars in value that are completely open source that anyone can read the code and exploit at any time. And so over time, these will be the most robust systems in existence, right? Like the over time of not getting hacked, these will become the most robust systems in existence. And so, yeah, I think a lot of the entrepreneurs in the space do have that ethos and are trying to do things right. And I've seen a lot of examples of that, like stories that I can mention of people like doing what's right, even when it's not profitable. But also, I think to some extent, crypto is about like building perfect games that can't be exploited. And so them exploited and failing is just part of like the survival, the evolutionary kind of dynamic.
Here we go. I have a weird question for you then about exploit and Web3 because you mentioned ethos open source, and this is something I can definitely connect a lot with. And I know how much of a stall it can sometimes be as well. Sometimes values and ethos can be bad for business. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But a question on a slightly, on the same but slightly different side. I mean, especially talking about economical exploits. In DeFi, we see a lot of them. Question is, how do you classify? I mean, would you say, for example, in a game, if a game was economically exploited, and sometimes those exploits, like from they're kind of part of the possibility of somebody who didn't see that, who designed it, and then another person came and exploited the tokenomics or the economics or whatever word tokenology, whatever word you want to use. And can it really be called an exploit if they played a fair game? They just found something and saw something, a loop or anything like that, that the person who designed it didn't see it, but the code was open source. Everybody could have seen it. So is it fair game or is it an exploit when somebody does that?
It depends how you define like an exploit. Normally, like even the word means to make full use of and derive benefit from a resource, right? Or like it's a software tool that takes advantage of a flaw in a system. So yeah, normally crimes in the real world, it's like there's rules and you broke the rules, right? Like you're not supposed to kill people and you killed someone. Like it's very obvious you broke a rule. I think in these systems, it's a bit more difficult because, as you say, they're like open source systems. They make no guarantees of rules or legality, and so I think there's like a thin line. Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a line. I don't think it's very well defined, but I think like there's a difference between someone like phishing your private key and like draining your wallet, which to me is like clearly a crime, to like even the Avi Eisenberg thing of like manipulating the price of mango and then exploiting mango. Like to me, it's much more because that's like bad. It was bad economic design that led to that exploit, right? And obviously, like Avi could have just submitted a white hack bounty and got, which maybe be the moral thing to do. Yeah, that's why I think actually like the bug bounty programs are so important, and like scaling those, but like almost more important than audits because they really give a path for because what you need to do is make the opportunity cost of hacking like higher, right? So like exploiting is difficult no matter what. Like hacking a lot of money and getting it out of crypto is difficult. You're committing crimes, you get authorities after you have to figure out how to get the money out. So if you can give people an easy option where they don't have to do that and they can still submit the bug and the systems can improve, I think that's a lot better. So yeah, I think it's a thin line. I think it depends on the type of exploit and stuff, and also who's losing money, right? Like who's getting hurt. Yeah.
In all honesty, I absolutely agree. In all honesty, I'm really surprised until today that I've only seen, I think, one example, and that was in 2017 or 18 of an Ethereum-based protocol that was offering like internal audits within the community. So basically, it turned bug bounty into something that was used by the community pool, and this just makes perfect sense. But I'm surprised that until now, protocols still don't do it. Do you think there is like, what's in your opinion the primary and the right, like in brackets, ways for protocols and applications maybe to improve security, whether it's smart contract security or tokenomic security or anything else, apart from, like you said, running bigger bug bounty programs? Is there any other things they should do or can do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge, I mean, this is a huge area. It'd be like, it would sort of be a podcast in itself, but there's a lot of things you can do. I think like obviously audits are a huge part of it, but there's a lot of protocols that submit audits and then the audits come back and they're still making changes to the code after the audits came in, right? And you see this even with live protocols, like people are merging to main and like while the protocol is live and none of that gets audited. So like just stuff like development practices and how like when you freeze code and stuff like that is super important. Um, then there's bug bounties, like paying generous enough bug bounties given the TVL that's at stake, right? And making it contingent on the severity of the bug as well. there's really good protocols for doing that now, and I think a lot of protocols are doing it. But yeah, and then there's also just like incident response. Like every protocol should have a plan in case that they do get exploited, right? Like what happens? Like who is the person in charge? Who is gonna like? What are the steps that you're gonna take? How do contracts get frozen if they do get frozen? Like all of that. So I think there's like a lot you can. It's a whole subject in and of itself, I think.
I'm curious if you've seen any, like, considering, with the labs and all the research, you must come, and not just the labs, but you have different branches, right, of what you guys do, and you must come at in the incubator as well. You must come at, a lot of teams, a lot of things that you see. Have you seen anything innovative in that direction, like a team that does something that was surprised you, and you were like, oh my god, why didn't we think about that? Or the opposite, or something terrible that you were like, oh my god, what are you guys doing? That you would say, please don't ever repeat that in terms of security.
Oh, so things that we see in the security
Yeah,
space.
yeah,
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 we're
yeah,
always surprised by how bad. Yeah,
always up
unfortunately,
bad.
on the yeah, unfortunately, I was actually no. Like when you go to the so like Gabe, our lawyer, went to the White Hat Security Summit in Paris, which had like Sam Sun and some of the top security people in it, and that was actually surprising on the positive side how much protocols have thought about their like incident response and things like that, and like the protocols that are being built to like simulate hacks and stuff. There's a lot being done, especially on Ethereum in Ethereum land where there's kind of more at stake. There are some teams that are kind of going above and beyond, but in terms of like the base security, like Unibot, it's like it exposes your private key in the app, right? And you have like contracts being changed for like protocols holding a lot of TVL with a single admin key. And almost every protocol is a multi-sig of people that are just like anons online where you have no certainty on who they are and what happens if and obviously like multi-chain, right? Which had like 800 million in assets, and it turns out there was like an NPC, but all the keys were the same guy, right? It's just like that meme of the guy with the mustache, the guy with the hat, like the same guy with the yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I think there's a lot of, unfortunately, mostly surprised on the negative side.
It is surprising sometimes. I mean, sometimes you look at it like with multi-chain. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, 800 million worth of money on somebody's computer. But man, let's talk a little bit about. I don't know if it's a topic that is something that is dear to you or not, but it's a topic that I guess is kind of popular to discuss in the crypto space, and VC money and distribution. And I mean, I know you guys are not a VC in the direct meaning of that word, but you're managing $250 million or euros. I don't know. You did mention if it was dollars or euros. I think you said dollars. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, dollars.
Which is a lot of money. So sorry.
Yeah, dollars. It's our own money, but yeah, and we are a VC, I guess, in that sense. We just don't have external money. But
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So then I'm gonna cut the water. So what do you think about VCs or protocols selling a big chunk of distribution to VCs? Of course, protocols need to feed developers. They need to feed the developers. They need to feed anything to do with user acquisition, marketing, da. And then, of course, there is the other side of having a big chunk of distribution put into single hands, who can, of course, well, there is good actors, bad actors, neutral actors, and it's always hard to guess what is this particular VC going to do. So a lot of people are wary about those things. What would you say to that? Do you say it's something that has to happen, or it's a part of the cycle? What's your reflection on this?
Yeah, I think protocols need to fund themselves, right? Like a lot of the times you need to build quite a lot, and that stuff isn't gonna generate any value, or like focusing on generating value is likely to make you less successful. And so you need some intermediate funding to get you to the point where the thing is sustainable, right? And so I think that'll always exist and will always be like necessary. And the question is like who should fund you? I think VCs are much better than right now the market thinks. I think they're like worse than maybe like 2 or 3 years ago when they were seen as the VC stamp of approval was seen as like a panacea, but they're definitely better than what the market thinks now. I think VCs generally add like if you go for the good ones, the tier one names, certainly they like add a lot of value. They know the space well. They can introduce you to people like exchangers and market makers and advise you on strategy and stuff. They've seen a lot. But they also have like 50 to 150 or 200 portfolio companies, right? And seven partners, and you're one of 150. So like the time you get is going to be limited, and mainly they're providing you with capital, and that's the way you should see it. I do think the SEC kind of created the VC market, right, by like making ICOs illegal, and so it kind of meant that teams had to go to VCs. And I do see a future where with Mika and stuff like that, we can actually reverse that a little bit and have like ICOs in a legally enforceable, like in a compliant way, come back. So I think it might change in future. But VCs aren't that bad. Like I think VCs are generally pretty good and like generally pretty diamond handed.
I don't think this is a bad.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't think this is a
Mhm.
bad. I think that a lot of the times this is something that gives you the opportunity to start the business or to feed the business in the right moment, or to give you the right push. It's just a matter of more curious about your opinion. I mean, you guys also have an incubator, right? And you also incubate teams, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How does it work? Why did you decide to do it? You know what? Why did you decide to? First of all, why an incubator? Because it's a pain in the ass sometimes. A lot of the times, I can imagine. Why did you decide to do it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think in general, the best people to raise from are your users, like ideally, right? And that was the promise of crypto. And like I think liquidity mining and stuff like that achieved that to an extent, but I think we're going to come up with even more aligned methods in future of how to raise from your users or your future users, or at least to encourage the people who invest to become users, like whether it's supply side or demand side. And then on the incubator, we came at it from a perspective of like we like being deep in the weeds. Like we like kind of, with venture and also with research, you can go pretty deep, but you then at some point you have to kind of like move on to the next thing, right? There's like a lot of areas that you have to keep abreast on. With labs, it really gives you the ability to go really deep on a certain area that you're building in or that you're interested in. And also we had worked with a lot of different crypto projects and startups, and we gained a lot of knowledge and kind of thought we could put it to use and build stuff better. Like we worked with these teams, and sometimes with consulting, it's frustrating. People don't always implement your ideas, um, and you're like you kind of want to get in there and just do it yourself. And I think that was the itch that we wanted to scratch with the incubator, was really to be more involved in like actively building. And we thought it would also help us with venture and with research to like have that knowledge of actually intimately from the inside how to build these projects. And it definitely has. That's kind of why we started it.
Would you still do it today if you were doing? If you knew that the other things are going to be successful, would you still be going ahead with the incubation?
That's a tough question. Um,
You're thinking about it. It's good.
I'm thinking about it.
That
Yeah,
means there is something to
yeah,
discuss. I like it.
yeah. I mean, I've thought about it a lot actually, but like I think when we started the incubator, we started it for a very specific opportunity, which we were like super excited about. And now the opportunity that we're excited about is less clear, and we're more in like a research phase. I mean, first of all, we had to kind of complete the projects that we were doing and make sure they were successful and stuff. And because it's our name, our reputation associated to them, and we wanted to really like make sure they were successful. And now we're at a stage where it's like figuring out what to do, what we should really build next. And there isn't as clear an opportunity, at least right now for us. Although there's some stuff we're really excited about, but it isn't as clear as when we started. And so I don't know that I would start an incubator right now. Actually, um, I think I would maybe go out and try and like build something specific and just like invest in research until I find that thing that I'm very excited about. I think it's kind of the same with investing too. Like most of the time, you want to like sit on the sidelines, right? And when you don't, I mean, obviously you want to have like in general, you want to be positioned for the long term, but in terms of your trading or your opportunistic stuff, you want to sit on the sidelines until you see a really great opportunity. Um, and I think I don't see a really great opportunity right now, like a really clear one. And I'm sure they're out there. We just don't see it yet.
It reminds me, of when you discussed the most typical mistake of a professional trader on a desk is making trades.
Yeah,
It's usually the most it's like doing trades for the sake of it. Oh, what am I gonna do? I don't see any trades. Oh, let me go find some. And that's when the mistakes that happen. Absolutely, man. It's something I didn't actually ask you at the beginning. Every time you start to talk, I kind of think about it
Hmm.
because you mentioned in every one of your answers, you always go towards ethos in one way or another, which is very, very important in my opinion. Why did you? I mean, yeah, of course, finding champions, making money, all good, building projects. That's all great, but you didn't have that in mind, I'm sure, when you decided to look at joining the Web3 space as co-founder. I mean, what was the story? Why did you decide? I mean, I'll call it Web3, call it crypto Web3, whatever you want. Why? And I'm not talking about the business side. I mean, what motivated you to? What attracted you?
I was definitely interested in making money, to be honest. Like that was part of it. And I thought like I was doing businesses before and stuff, and I saw a big opportunity here because I saw first of all something that I was convinced was going to be like really important for humanity and for the world, like for where everything was heading, everything I was reading, all the economics I was into and stuff like that. And second of all, which was like something that really suited my kind of like skills and knowledge and personality. And I felt like it was really early and most people weren't getting it. Like most people were kind of excited about the wrong thing. Like either they thought it was a scam or they kind of like, yeah, I just thought there was a big opportunity. So that was part of it. I think what keeps me around now is well, I wanted to make money. I didn't have like sort of like I didn't want to be a billionaire or anything like that, and I still don't. Like I'm well above like the number that I had initially defined, and I'm like that number didn't go up for me. I'm like pretty happy with just having a chill life and not having to worry about money too much. So that's not really the motivator anymore. Yeah, it's more so I think actually like delivering on the promise of this tech. I feel like we've all made far too much money compared to like the impact that this has had so far. I think one day people are going to be very thankful that a bunch of degens spent like 10 years building this. And yeah, for me, I see the world getting more and more deglobalized, right? Like you had a century of the US being the world power and keeping everyone else in check as the global police force. And now you have a world where like there's China and Russia emerging in this like multipolar world order. Currencies are starting to be weaponized. You have like insane levels of debt to where it starts to be like existential to the system if a lot of people opt out. And you have all the conditions which crypto was built for, in my opinion, which like self-sovereign kind of money and just self-sovereign data, right? Because money is just like a form of data, right? Like a way to transfer information around. And so yeah, I think that you've seen it like multiple times in history. Like even this century, you saw FDR ban ownership of gold, right? When that became existential to the system. You've seen recently, you saw like Kanye West get canceled last year, right? Like Kanye West got his bank accounts frozen and like he wasn't able to pay his bills for a bit because he didn't have a bank account. And like in the UK, Nigel Farage, right, a former prime minister, I believe, like he's got like canceled. And in Canada, you had the truckers, like their whole bank accounts got canceled because they protested against government they didn't believe in. And like the states and companies have more power than ever. And I think with this technology, you can kind of really upend that to a level where the individual has the power, and then the individual has the choice to delegate that power to the state or to a company for convenience, which they may want to do a lot of the time because it is convenient, right? And crypto is inconvenient. The crypto UX and memorizing your private key and stuff is inconvenient. But my general thesis is like crypto doesn't get adopted because of like a superior killer product the way that like the internet had. It gets adopted so it doesn't like pull people in. People get pushed in because the current system stops serving them or becomes like coercive, basically. And I think that's generally been the like that's why you have so much tether adoption in China, and that's why crypto penetration is the highest in like Nigeria and Zimbabwe and Argentina, right, where their financial systems don't work. And unfortunately, I think like every in the current system that we're in with debt at these levels, there's really like no way to get out of this without extreme inflation or extreme deflation, extreme pain. And in a multipolar world order, that's going to lead to governments getting aggro. And I think crypto is like, yeah, yeah. Sorry, that was a really long answer, but yeah, I think crypto is the kind of solution to that.
Perfect. Perfect. Debank the bank. That was unbank the bank, right? Not bank that bank, the other way around. Let's
Yeah,
unbank the bank.
exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like giving everyone um, like a Swiss bank account, and all the advantages that come with a Swiss bank account and like an offshore bank account, right? Where you're, because why do people put their money in Switzerland? Because they don't want anyone to be able to take it. And Switzerland, before blockchains, was the most credibly neutral place where, like, historically, no matter what state wrote to them, they never gave them your money, right? And that's why they absorbed like all the world's financial assets and like private banking and stuff was born there. And with crypto, you have like something even more credibly neutral where you don't have to trust like the Swiss, you can actually just trust like cryptography and economic incentives and have your not just your money, but a whole financial system, a whole system of social media, a whole system of identity, like built on these rails.
Let's keep this topic. I like it. I was asking in East Lisbon last year. East Lisboa, sorry.
Mhm.
Actually, quite a lot of founders or co-founders, whatever, the same kind of question. I mean, from, for example, Stakefish, P2P, Chorus One, probably some of them, and the question was more along the same question was more along those lines, whether or not they think that the reason they originally joined this space, and whether they still think that the product they are building is actually affecting somebody's life. Because I mean, we talk about it all the time, all of us in this space, and I have been in this space for a long time, to do it myself personally and to fail at it personally, succeed, fail, everything together. But, you know, I'm curious sometimes whether my brain is so far from reality and people's problems that my convictions and my beliefs and my, values, ethos, whatever, are completely disattached. So this is the question I want to ask you. Like, do you think that what you're doing today, with everything we talk about, do you think that there are people out there who will or are benefiting already from that and it's helping their lives?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I like to think so. I hope so. The way I think about it is like crypto right now is an extremely expensive database, right? And by nature of being extremely expensive, it can only serve very high value use cases, right? Which is why NFT PFPs costing millions of dollars were the killer app, right? And token speculation and perps and stuff like that. Those are like high value applications where people are willing to pay the high fees that you need to interact with a blockchain. Um, and I think it's important to nail those use cases because like that's what then kind of takes us down the cost curve and funds the improvements in infrastructure and stuff like that that makes it accessible to everyone. And so to me, the first like real killer app is I've said this a lot is something like a decentralized like FTX, right? Where you're able to speculate and store wealth and speculate on a bunch of different assets in a non-custodial way, in a very fast way that mimics a centralized exchange. And so people are able to kind of store their wealth on chain, like buy different assets on chain, including real world assets, borrow and lend, have their whole financial lives managed in like in one place kind of thing. And then obviously someone can build a payments thing on top of that and on and off ramp and things like that. And I think that app is initially most attractive to like rich people, right? And specifically like it's attractive to the crypto degens themselves that understand this stuff, that have made their money on this stuff. And then it's sort of like you think where's the rest of the use adoption going to come from? And so I think it's you have these rich crypto degens on chain that store all their wealth here. They know the tech. They don't want to have to interact with banks who ask them like 10,000 questions and blood type before they can use them and like have banks in different countries and stuff. They just want to have crypto and they'll interact with a bank if they need like a house or a mortgage, but everything else is going to stay in crypto rails. And so to some extent, then it's like you're going to have I think two things. You're going to have more and more people launch tokens because over the last 5 years, so much money has been made with tokens that for any, this is like the cold hard reality is for any ambitious, smart, young, technical person, they're going to heavily consider to doing something where they can launch a token or attaching a token to something they're doing. And so that brings more and more like intellectual capital and wealth on chain in itself, like natively. And then at the same time, people that have like traditional assets, real world assets, are going to see this giant market on chain of like stable coins on that are literally on zero yield, and are going to say, let me bring real world assets on chain, right? Let me bring my treasuries on chain or my real estate on chain and stuff like that, right? That drives more and more like assets and liquidity on chain. And then I think as the infrastructure scales and improves, then you start getting more of like the low value or relatively low value use cases like gaming, which is one that we're particularly excited about because gaming is like internet native, right? All the assets are digitally native, so you can have them like run on blockchains in a very seamless way. And there's a lot of different kinds of games that we're excited about. I also think like NFTs will be a big thing, but not just like high value ones, but also like anything, like any. If you think about like most things in the world are NFTs, actually. Like there's a very small thing, like subset of things that are actually like fungible. Most everything else is NFTs. I think there's like a lot of opportunities in things like collectibles, but also like identity itself moving on chain, right? Like right now, every time I buy a flight or interact with some online service, I have to like fill in the same like annoying like email, phone number, all of this. And then it's also like you're logging into something again and you have to do it again and do your authenticator. And not only is it a pain in the ass, but it's also like my information sits in like thousands of databases all around the world, right? And there's like much better ways for that to work with ZK, and like there's companies like Sysmo that are doing it, right? Where you don't have to give anyone your identity, or you have to give one person or one entity your identity, and then you can just produce a ZK proof of whatever attribute people want to find out about. And then from there, you start having like social, right? You have identities, you have assets, you have like the basis of social. And I think social starts with social trading because that's already an app. Like it just happens without an app on crypto Twitter, right? Like most of what people do on crypto Twitter is shill coins to each other and follow each other based on what they're investing in. So I think someone will nail a product for that where you can like copy trade and spin up funds very seamlessly and stuff. And then that starts, you start getting clout based on your like verified on-chain trading score, and then more social applications come from that, right? And then you have like identity, you have social, you have gaming, you have a financial system, and then like at some point payments will happen too, right? You have social, you have all this stuff, all the basis for it. Now crypto scalable, you'll have like payments, and then I think you can start, and then I think with all this, like decentralized infrastructure will have to exist because it needs to facilitate all this stuff in an unstoppable way, right? So you'll need to have decentralized front ends and decentralized back ends and decentralized DNS, and all this stuff kind of exists because it needs to support all these user applications. And yes, I think that's kind of how it like unrolls for me in the, but yeah.
Makes perfect sense, man. I understand where with the line of thought here from this point to unrolling how it helps, of course, in a lot of ways. I guess that one of the most simple example of non-third party interaction between humans is actually betting or speculation.
Yeah.
We talk about the weather, we talk about the match, we talk about the where is it best to live, what is it best to eat for breakfast, and we always disagree. It's always a transactional kind of situation. Oh, how was the weather? Well, I don't know. I think the weather tomorrow is going to be good. So it's already kind of like in there, in between our interaction. We just don't really think about it like that. But yeah, so I totally see your line of thought here. Actually, I want to ask you about adoption because you talk about it and you mention it like a lot. And in your opinion, has adoption for crypto has it happened already, or are we still waiting for it? And I'll tell you why I'm asking that, because in my opinion, and this is again an opinion and a question of what you think about it, your reflection on this opinion. Like I think that adoption kind of happened with NFTs. Mass usage hasn't happened. Mass usage is still far away from common. I mean, you mentioned Argentina, Nigeria, a lot of other countries that struggle with the economy. And of course, the usage there is much higher. But then we have the more developed, in brackets, countries that have a more complicated economical regulator, a more strict economical regulator where the usage is not as high. But it seems that everybody, since the whole NFT things for the last 2 years, it seems that everybody knows about crypto. So has adoption happened or it still hasn't?
Yeah, it depends how you define it. Like I think there's like when I entered in 2017, there was or like maybe 2017 is a bad time, but definitely in 2018, people would never think that we got to where we are today. I think. Uh, like I remember people saying that you'd never have a decentralized exchange. There was just Ether Delta, this like clunky on-chain order book, and you're never gonna have a decentralized exchange, it's impossible. You're never going to have like a decentralized lending. The only use case is BTC, all this stuff. Now you have decentralized credit protocols that out survived all their centralized counterparts, right? Like in 2022, every single centralized custodian bank went bust, and Aave, Maker, and all the others plugged along fine, right? So like, and now you have like Uniswap. Some days in the last few years has done more volume than Coinbase, right? Like on-chain exchange doing more volume than Coinbase, and you have over $100 billion of stable coins on chain. You have a bunch of people that prefer to hold stable coins than fiat cash, right? And that not just prefer it, they're willing to give up on like 5% yields to just hold it on chain, which shows how much they value the money being on chain, right? Whether it's because it's theirs and they can't be rugged as easily, or because they can have access to more investment opportunities they're interested in, whatever it might be. There's clearly like utility there, and that is like the use case of this stuff is a non it's like a censorship resistant database, right? So if people are choosing to put their data on the censorship resistant database, there is adoption. You can see it by the fees people are willing to pay to access ETH1 and stuff like that. Now, I think like obviously when you talk about like mainstream adoption or like a killer app that everyone uses hasn't happened yet. I'm not sure that will happen, honestly. Like I think there will be some runaway successes, especially like in the gaming space. I think there's going to be at least like one or two like runaway successes that become mainstream games where people are using crypto without even knowing it. Yeah, I'm not sure we'll have like a killer app in the traditional sense, like pushes mainstream adoption. I think it'll happen relatively. I think it'll happen like in tandem with the traditional financial world, like disintegrating to some extent. Um, yeah.
I think it's one of the first times I speak within the last 5 or 6 years in crypto with somebody who has the same opinion as me about adoption. I think the adoption will happen. When people say, "Oh, when will my grandmother use crypto?" My answer is when you will become the grandmother. That's when everybody will be using crypto.
Yeah, I definitely think this grandmother obsession is a little bit weird. Like the whole,
It is.
like my grandmother doesn't use like Uber. Like she hardly uses the internet, like what like
Uh,
it's I don't know, like
uh,
grandmothers are never going to use crypto. Like even our parents are probably
no,
never going to use crypto, and that's fine. Like yeah, that's
absolutely.
totally fine. And I think this stuff will be used by the wealthy first, by people who have a need to protect their wealth. Um yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Man, I have too many questions for you to be honest, but you say a lot of interesting things. Let me ask you about Bitcoin before. Oh wow. I don't know how the time. Whenever you have an interesting conversation, the time always seems to just finish in 10 minutes instead of 1 hour. But let me ask you about Bitcoin. I mean, we talked about use cases in Bitcoin and block space, and you are. It's not very often that the conversation starts with somebody talking about the price of block space, and I purposefully didn't go there at the beginning, but I'm curious, like, what's your opinion? What's your take? What's your personal take on Bitcoin and its current use case? Does it still have? I mean, a lot of people. Let's put it this way. I don't want to like. I'm gonna give you something negative, something positive. So something negative is a lot of people say that hey, Bitcoin is the only coin, but does that make sense? Because we live in a decentralized. We're trying to build a decentralized world, right? So the kind of one religion thing kind of loses all objective. On the other hand, as much as somebody might hate Bitcoin, we still, when we go to the markets, we still see that crypto is still sitting on top of Bitcoin, all the liquidity, not all of it, of course, but at least 40%. So what do you think about Bitcoin and its use case as a possible future development?
Yeah, I'm probably like my peak bearishness of Bitcoin was like before ordinals, where like it just seemed like Ethereum was the better Bitcoin to me in kind of every way, right? Like Ethereum, because the whole argument with Bitcoin is it's like the meme, it has this like fixed monetary policy, which like at that stage wasn't sustainable, um, and it's number one, right? But there's no like fundamental reason for that to be the case. It's just like a kind of a reflexive meme, right? And to some extent, you could imagine like a world in which Bitcoin becomes number two and Ethereum surpasses it. Like it would quickly become number three, number four, number five, because it's the part of the meme is being number one, right? Being the most recognizable, the most liquid, the most valuable, all that kind of stuff. And I really like I thought like Ethereum was kind of like, especially with the merge happening, it had like the burn narrative, it had a native yield, has a bunch of applications building on top of it, some kind of fundamental drivers. It became like a better store of value. but I still like, I think that's changed, first of all, with inscriptions, which have shown how much people value Bitcoin block space, right? Like to put whatever on it, whether it's NFTs, like coins, random things, like it's clear that people really value Bitcoin block space. And I think that just shows how much potential alpha there would be in the Bitcoin core devs moving a bit quicker to enable applications and stuff on top of it. And so the sustainability thing for me is like less of an issue now, because feels kind of clear that if they did come into a situation where they needed to open the floodgates, there would be a lot of demand for that block space. Yeah, I'm still much more of an ETH bull than Bitcoin. I hold much more Ethereum than Bitcoin, but I think it's hard to argue with holding some Bitcoin, and like the meme value of Bitcoin is this uncorrelated asset. It's the thing that everyone's heard of. And also like with this recent discussions of the Ethereum Foundation kind of changing the monetary policy because of Lido and stuff, it sort of like plays into everything. I think that'd be a huge mistake, and it would definitely make me more bearish Ethereum, and sort of plays into everything that the Bitcoin people say, right? The Bitcoin doesn't change, and that's its value. Yeah. So I'm more bullish Ethereum, but I'm definitely like if my for my normie friends, I say like buy some Bitcoin, buy some Ethereum, and then if you want to go out on the risk curve more, maybe some Solana or something.
I gotta say, I'm not a Bitcoin fanboy. I gotta say,
Mm.
people, I've been a long time, but this is a personal thing. It's not. But let me ask you one then last question before the blitz. How and again, this is something I think that you will probably have a good take on, man. What's your opinion on how do we cure tribalism then? I mean, how do we? I think, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems I've seen in crypto space and Web3, and it's actually the complete illogic. It's the most illogical thing, tribalism, because the whole point of decentralization is to kind of, I guess, to avoid that, right? To skip that. But then, we see traction, of course, the network effects we see in Ethereum, we see the networks effects on Bitcoin, but there is some other projects out there like Cosmos, Solana, Near, Polkadot that are getting certain traction. But still, the tribalism keeps growing, 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 growing. And how do we cure that, man? How do we get all the projects to get the same amount of traction? The blockchain, crypto, decentralization to get that traction and not individual projects? Or is that something out of the fantasy?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I think humans are naturally tribal. They get tribal about everything, right? Like, look how tribal people get about 11 or like 22 random people kicking a ball into a net, right? Like the amount of deaths that people have over that when they have literally no financial stake in it, just an emotional stake for something that isn't theirs either, just passed on to them by their parents normally, right? Or by their culture. So I think when you have that plus deep financial incentives, you're going to have some pretty intense tribalism. I think it's really hard to avoid. I think the good thing about, I mean, to some extent, it's useful. Like, like I think Vitalik had a good post about this, right? Like, tribalism kind of is what protects a community from getting corrupted somehow, right? They're like the high priests that try and protect the community from getting corrupted. For me, it's just not my thing, and it's not the thing of anyone at Delphi. Really, we like, first of all, we're not zero sum about this stuff. I think a lot of them will succeed, and second of all, it's like probabilistic, right? Like you just don't have enough. I don't anyone has enough information to say with 100% certainty that this is the things will play out. So you just have to make like a bunch of different bets in my mind.
Bread and entertainment, I guess,
Yeah.
is the answer, right? But it's always been about watching some guys beating the crap out of each other or kicking football or anything like that. Okay, man. So Blitz, three questions. You can answer very quickly. You can answer slow. Up to you. They go down. First one, easy, especially for you, should be very easy. Three projects doesn't have to be crypto, by the way. It can be completely outside of crypto that you think are technologically exciting today? Three projects, or could be three branches of technology or something like that. Could be crypto projects, anything else. Could be football teams,
Hmm.
doesn't matter.
Okay. I think all the perps, non-custodial, centralized exchange type stuff in crypto is really exciting, like DYDX, Vertex, Mars, GMX, GNS, all that stuff I find pretty exciting. I think that's like, yeah, maybe one area. Obviously I find really exciting. Also AI applied to crypto, I find really exciting, especially with regards to because a lot of people have talked about distributed compute marketplaces and verification and stuff. But I think one thing that hasn't been talked about as much is just like the UX, sort of the chat UX for crypto. You're kind of seeing it with like Unibot, that that's like a much simpler UX than using MetaMask or anything like that. So I think the idea of being able to just have a chat bot that you go like stake my ETH in Lido and then like deposit it on Aave, borrow some, do this, is much simpler than, because I don't think people will interact with apps in future with dApps. I think they'll be either through a dashboard or through something like AI. So that's probably another one. And then one that I've been like really excited about for years, and I'm an avid sort of user of, is VR and like AR. Uh, yeah, like VR is my main gaming platform right now. I play a first person shooter in VR, and it's awesome.
Nice.
Like, and yeah,
Nice.
I think it's gonna be like an incredible medium for gamers. So like, yeah, I'm really excited about VR.
I had actually a lot of UX questions for you, but I skipped them because
A lot of what questions?
UX related questions. Like I had some,
Oh,
but I skipped them because I thought, well, next time. But it's just impossible to fit everything into 1 hour, man. But
yeah,
have you
man.
ever, by the way, about VR, have you ever tried putting a drone in the back of you and in the VR camera, what the drone sees at the back of your head,
No, I've actually never tried
and
that.
then you can walk like a 3D shooter?
That's crazy.
Try. Your brain will go crazy, man. The first 30 seconds, your brain will refuse to move. You will not understand. Your like body goes, what's going on? Like, why is it doing this? And then after the 30 seconds, you kind of understand. Okay, I just have
Damn,
to follow the. It's pretty cool. Okay, second question.
that's crazy.
Give me two motivational things that keep you going in your daily life. Building, researching, incubating, investing, and so on and so forth.
Okay, one is probably just like the brotherhood that I have with the other founders. Like, we did this stuff together. We really came from nothing. Like, we had no investors, we had no like outside older people, outside help. Like, it was all us doing it. So we've been through a lot together, and we've been through a lot of ups and downs. And like, I really love them. They're like my best friends and co-founders. So that's like it's really nice to be able to build something really cool with friends like that. That's really motivating. Another motivational thing that keeps me, just I guess the feeling that like, it's gonna sound so lame, but just that like just keep showing up, right? Like I've been through enough stuff, not just here, but in life, to know that, yeah, you just kind of like keep showing up. Like, if bad stuff happens, and you're gonna keep showing up and keep trying to fix it, like eventually you'll get to something. And I really like trust myself to kind of keep showing up for stuff, sometimes to a fault, I think. But
I
yeah,
don't think it's
that's
lame, man. That's really cool, man. That's actually a
yeah,
really good answer. It's original and honest. I think it's very
yeah.
honest. Okay,
In crypto especially, you need that. Like, crypto is gonna bring you to your knees a few times over your, yeah,
a few times is a good is a good count. When
yeah,
you get to 5 or 6, you
yeah,
stop counting, so it's okay.
yeah, exactly.
It's just a last question of the blitz. Give me one person, character, real, imaginary, writer, developer, movie maker, book author, book personage, doesn't matter. Could be family member. One persona in life that inspires you. Not your guru, not your idol, but inspires you
Hmm.
or has inspired you at least.
Well, the one that comes to mind, and it like it's sad because he hasn't inspired me for a while, but he inspired me a lot in my younger years, was Conor McGregor,
Conor
like back in
McGregor.
the day.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice. MMA. Okay, okay.
yeah, like I was very, it was like he was coming up at the same time that I was getting really into the sport, and he had like just a beautiful style, and the combination of his style and like the shit talking and like the confidence, and like watching that whole thing happen, like Jose Aldo, like, yeah, it was just an insane time in my life in an MMA, and it was like super inspiring. Like, the guy was, it was crazy to be able to like talk that much shit to kind of people that are trained killers, and then show up on the night with everyone rooting against you and perform. He was like a super impressive, and like his confidence was super impressive. Yeah, like yeah.
Have you ever seen him do a meia lua de compass? I've seen him, I think, do it on it's a capoeira kick. I've seen him do it
I
on.
have, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I
nice.
did a bit of capoeira with Floyd as well.
Yeah, he did.
Back
Did
in the day. Yeah, he's into his capoeira.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice, cool, man. Man, we could carry on for another hour, probably for sure. I would love to. Man, thank you very much for all your answers, man. This has been really, really pleasurable. And I don't know, I still like, I think I went through like 15% of the questions I had prepared for you. And yeah.
Ah, shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was long-winded for some
No,
reason.
you were perfect, man. It's more of when you get carried away into the topics, and I was like, da, 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 da. But anyways, again, thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much for coming, and everybody who tuned in.
Yep,
Thank you very much for listening. And yeah, man, see you around the space, and maybe even with us again sometime, of course, if you find the time. So thank you.
absolutely. Thanks very much, man.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. This content was created by the Citizen Cosmos Validator. If you enjoyed it, please support us by delegating to Citizen Cosmos and help us to create more educational content.